We are getting 4 new daily chess commanders coming to Rise of Kingdoms. So today's video we're going from worst to best in value. Note that I'll also be updating the best daily chess commanders, but I'm waiting to see if we get more archer commanders first. In last place we have Bertrand. There's not much to say here. He's just not very viable, and you're just going to unlock him and he's going to gather dust most times. In third place we have Flavius. While he is much more viable than Bertrand, you need a lot of gold heads to be able to use him properly, so you don't get as much value slowly working on him piecemeal with these daily chests. In second place we have Scipio Prime, who is a great free-to-play option, has great unmaxed skill potential, and is forgiving if you work on him slowly, which makes him an ideal choice for this, and is only really outranked by our number 1 choice, Nevsky, who is just completely impactful in every facet of the actual cavalry meta, and even new commanders aren't going to unseat that. And even though you have to max him, he's definitely worth maxing. This is an Asher commander short. Asher is the newest archer rally, and seems to live up to the Gorgo Slayer reputation he had upon release. With a solid kit that distinctly targets infantry defenses effectively, as well as dealing heavy damage to all other garrisons, swarming is a dangerous proposition, while trying to weather out his raw damage is also a very risky proposition. For talents, I like to go with the similar talent setup to Lapu, with a maxed out skill tree to maximize your damage, and you can adjust in some different spots as you need to maximize what you want to do specifically for him. For formations, Wedge is obviously the best one, with the damage output being needed by rallies, and it can maximize the advantage he has. For pairings, Henry is the main answer, but you may also see the likes of Liang paired with him to resist Swarm, but Henry does an excellent job on his own doing that. For the meta, he's strongly anchored as a Gorgo counter as well as a huge damage output commander, and will continue to be for quite some time. This is a Hermann Prime commander review short. Hermann Prime is the newest archer commander on the wheel in Rise of Kingdoms, and is a solid field AoE support option. With a stacking poison debuff, solid mobility, and a 5-target massive AoE, there's a lot of potential in his kit, although some fragility holds him back from being truly earth-shattering in the meta. For talents, I roll with this overall talent tree here, with a focus on a maxed out support tree and as much survivability as you can from his talents. For formations, Wedge is your top option, but triple line formation is also solid if you tend to get focused to stay more mobile. For pairings, you want to pair with YSG or Liang for maxed AoE damage and stacking AoEs, or go with Boudica Prime to double up on debuffs and get some survivability. For the meta, I think he'll be a solid option, but not exclusively the only lead commander, with the likes of Boudica Prime and Liang still being incredibly solid. In a previous video, we talked about where Lapulapu will be best suited. So today's video, we're going to cover the opposite, where his weaknesses are going to be amplified and show that he is, in fact, not a perfect commander. Lapulapu's main weakness overall is Swarm and heavy attack and pressure. So generally, Garrison mains will want to augment that by mitigating an enemy's ability to crowd and swarm the garrison. While the 5-target AoE does deter swarms, heavier swarm amounts will begin to overwhelm his defense, particularly when you cannot utilize the limiting factors of forts and passes. This is most evident in flags, as the limited capacity, wide open spacing, and ease of access for enemies can easily make his flaws show more clearly. And without control of the field, Lapulapu can become overwhelmed, and when not paired with a swarm-resistant commander due to the sheer amount of damage heavy swarm will do to a defense, making him particularly in need of good field support in those areas. Here are the 3 civilizations that come host to the most meta commanders in the current meta. Note that these aren't about the civilizations themselves so much as the commanders that grace their ranks. First, we have Rome. You have the likes of Flavius in the garrison meta, Scipio Prime in the field meta, Trajan as a meta support, and really they're great in infantry and are only held back by being weak everywhere else. Next, we have China. You have Liang, you have Wu, you have Liu Che, all gracing the ranks of the field meta and being great, as well as the fact they have Guan and Sun Tzu, which are great alternatives to the meta as well. Last, but certainly not least, you have the Byzantines. Whether you want to talk about Justinian and his impact on the rally meta, Heraclius and his best in garrisons moniker, as well as the fact that you have Constantine making a huge comeback. The Byzantines do have a lot of variety and are also worthy of being on this list. Here are the best slots to get Iconic 5 in first for rallies. Since each equip slot has the same basic bonus structure for Iconics, here are the slots you should look to max first. First is the weapon slots with a 10% chance to snag 5 to 6.5% damage. Even for 2 seconds, that's huge, And a chance to line this up with a primary or secondary skill on a garrison is huge for your trade and making the garrison really suffer. And for those who like more steady damage, you can run the iconic on the helm instead here. Next, we have the accessories, which are great, but really only held back by the fact that you have random stat boost on both of them and the scarcity of blueprints, so you can't really control what you get, but either one is going to benefit you as a rally in one way or another. Last, but certainly not least, we have the boots. While this is a controversial, I also think it's great because you get 100% uptime on this versus a random chance, which helps steady out your trade. And while it might not be as flashy as a helm, or it might not be as flashy as the percentage chances, it gives you consistent move speed to get where you're going. And here are two of the iconic tier 5s you will not need. Since iconic stats are generally the same from slot to slot, here are the slots you won't need to worry about pushing iconic after tier 1. First, we have the boots. Outside of iconic tier 2, the gains for successive iconic tiers do not benefit garrisons, with 300 units not being useful and offset by a troop expansion, and march speed not being applicable for 99% of the lifespan of a garrison march. Add on a tier 5 level that gives you march speed and defense, but only outside of Alliance territory, and you get a stat that can't really be used for a garrison that is correct design location defending Alliance territory. Next, we have the gloves. Similarly, the tier 2 gives very little in terms of stat, with 1% stat investment for 10 legendary materials and 20 million gold. Add on a very small unit capacity gain, which is offset by troop expansions, and a lackluster move speed gain when attacked, and you're left with an iconic set that leaves very little for garrison mains to get excited about. Here's how new commander releases can help improve armaments. Right now, Rise of Kingdoms has an armament problem. Not referring to randomness or drop rates, there's a specific subsection of formations and armaments that just do not translate to meta commanders in the later game. In the early stages, stats can carry a good off formation like Echelon or Hollow Square on a normal commander to some measure of success with raw stats. But in the later game, when specialty inscriptions are used, so many formations just become unused outside of a single niche. However, Rise of Kingdoms has a unique opportunity as new commanders come out. With these clearly empty niches, new commanders can be created to fill those gaps, creating a much more balanced game with more freedom of choice and build order without having to change any formations. And with this opportunity, we also get a chance to try out unique kits, playstyles, and experiences that did not exist before, resulting in a win for formations, a win for developers, and a win for players. Here's why legendary weapons are typically the last items built for a set in Rise of Kingdoms. Legendary weapons have some of the highest total stat in the game, and yet they're some of the last items made by players as they build up sets. In today's video, we'll cover why. First, of course, is the cost. Weapons are the most expensive items to build, with 90 total legendary materials invested versus 60 in many of the other items. In addition to blueprints being less available for weapons than other slots. Next is the stat differential. Epic and rare weapons are some of the best value items in the game, with Golden Age, Heart of the Saint, and Gatekeeper Shield all being amazing value, while other equipment slots of similar rarity have less amazing value versus their legendary counterparts, meaning those are easier to upgrade sooner to get more value. Last, but certainly not least, is the stats of the weapons. Most of the weapons are attack, with the exception of the archer gear, and attack is just generally so weak that there's not as urgent of a need to build it quickly. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust. In today's episode, we are covering Jadwiga and Scipio Prime. First, Jadwiga is a pretty significant bust. While she did have a brief stint in the meta upon her release, and particularly with Nevsky and YSS, the success of her as a pair is more due to her pairing partner rather than herself. While this was a missed opportunity to put Cav garrisons on the map, her successor Jan did an excellent job of that, making her not a total bust as it did pave the way for one of the most beloved garrisons in Rise of Kingdoms. Next, Scipio Prime is a massive boom. Scipio Prime is definitionally what you want in a free-to-play commander. Great in the field, good support buffs that don't need super good gear, a skill set that doesn't need to be fully maxed to be great, all in a wheel commander that's also good in city defense when you absolutely need him to be. Scipio Prime really did it all at different points, and is still a main piece of the infantry field meta. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, and today's episode covering Flavius and Boudica Prime. First, Flavius is right in the middle, but I'm going to give a slight nudge into bust territory. Now before you blow up the comments, hear me out. Flavius was released as a Zenobia replacement, and never really reached that point. He's one of my most used garrisons, and is definitely a meta staple. Will continue to be for some time as I anticipate, but he never quite reached the broken Zenobia replacement expectations he had on release. making him very slightly a bust. Next, Boudica Prime is a massive boom. Boudica Prime did have some mixed reviews on release, but there was some general optimism, and she's done an excellent job of silencing any critic. With a great support kit, terrifying damage, and great survivability, she fills a lot of niches and even had a small stint in the rally meta, while also being basically a staple of most meta field marches in the game right now. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust. In this video, we're covering Justinian and Gorgo. First, Justinian is a slight boom. He's outplayed his expectations, as many thought he'd just be really bad on release. But he wasn't really excelled to the level of Nevsky or Jan or Attila even to any Cav release we've had, although it's more a testament to how spoiled we are as Cav mains in the current meta, earning him still a very solid boom grade overall. Next, Gorgo is a pretty massive boom pick. Gorgo is anticipated to be strong, and strong she is. While she does get countered by archers, most of the Garrison meta does already, and she's well worth the investment for Garrison mains everywhere, as well as outplaying her original niche and breaking into the field meta with her insanely solid kit, making her surpass her original expectation and being an overall boom at pretty much every level. Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust. In this Garrison edition, Jan and Dido. First, Jan is a massive boom. He's anticipated to be pretty good, and has exceeded that in pretty much every facet of the word, in terms of quality of Garrison, as well as having an insane amount of staying power in the current meta. Upon release, it was anticipated that a pairing like Jadwiga or Nevsky, while Nevsky has been solid, the discovery of Jan YSS, which is now Jan Hera, and even Jan Lapu, is pretty much keeping him constantly in the meta as a counter to Asher, solidifying his spot for the time being, and earning that solid boom status. Next, Dido has been a pretty slight bust. While her kit is great and solid 1v1, but her kit just does not shine nearly as much as the other meta Garrisons, and a weakness to Swarm makes that even more apparent as she struggles to find her way. With any luck, Lapu could maybe pull her out of this slump and back into the conversation, helping her redeem her initial busts.